Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm taking an idea from two of my favorite YouTube channels. Shifter and Not Just Bikes did a cycling friendliness showdown between their two cities to see how they matched up. In it, they used a method called +1 - 2, where every time they encountered something that makes biking easier, they scored at 1 point. And every time they encountered something that makes it more difficult, they lost 2 points. So this first video is great, and it gives you a good idea as to what kind of things go into making a city great for cycling. In Shifter's more recent video, he looked at using the scoring system on different neighborhood greenways, also sometimes called bikeways. I've linked both of these videos in the description. So these greenways are areas that don't necessarily have a lot of cycling specific infrastructure, but that use calm neighborhood streets to create cycling corridors. I've been wanting to do a video on Shaw Street in Toronto for a while now, which I think falls under this category. Recent data shows that Shaw Street is the first street in Toronto that has more cycling traffic than car traffic. And so I think it's a great example of how great these bikeways could be. Still, not all of Shaw from end to end is created equal. So what's great and what's not so great compared to what we've seen in other cities, as shown in the Shifter and Not Just Bikes videos. I took a ride along Shaw Street from Davenport Road in the north to the waterfront at the Martin Goodman Trail in the south. This all doesn't follow Shaw Street, it goes along other streets as well, but this is the whole greenway as far as I could tell. I used the +1 - 2 scoring to see how it compared. All right, so here we're starting out, and I'm starting out coming along Davenport. So I would love to give a -2 for the quality of the bike lane on Davenport, but that's not within the scope, so I'll leave that out for now. And so I'm just about to approach Shaw, and I'm gonna give a +1 here because you can see on the other side of the street that they've facilitated the crossing there. And so they put some protection and allowed 2 ways so that people can make the transition onto the greenway. So I'm going to give +1 for that. This stretch, this first stretch, this is part that hasn't really been redone when the whole Shaw Street project was done, and it's not as great. Things are very wide. You have traffic in both directions, so I'm going to give a -2 for this as you can see how wide it is. There is some traffic calming. There's the speed bumps which help, but it's not great with how wide it is, and so it encourages speeding and other things. Okay, so here coming up we have a bike lane. The transition into the bike lane wasn't great because there's parking allowed right before it, but there is a bike lane. I'm not going to give this a +1 or a -2. It's better than nothing, but it doesn't feel the greatest here. And so here's where we really transition, I would say, into the main part of the project once we get out of the bumpy stuff. And this part's great. I think this is the part that's really encouraged cycling more than anything. You can see we have a contraflow lane, so cyclists can go both ways, but it keeps the driving lane in the opposite direction really narrow, as well as parking, which can be a problem in some places. It really helps to narrow the road, and cyclists can take the full lane in the other direction without any worry or anything like that. So this is easily going to get a +1 for how just comfortable it feels to ride along this, and how you really feel like the road is meant for you as a cyclist, I would say, in these sections. So right, and here's a great section where we change the directions that vehicles can go, and so to facilitate that we have a modal filter, and I'm going to give that another +1. As it allows bikes to go through, but not any vehicles. Okay, and one little quirk of these areas are there are a lot of stop signs. So I'm going to take a -2 just because of how many stop signs there are, which is really tedious for cycling. I think there's better ways you can handle many of these intersections, especially if you see Shaw as a main route for cycling. Why not give cyclists the priority in those places and find other ways to do traffic calming? One thing about contraflow lanes is that unfortunately they don't stop people from parking on the wrong side of the road. There's no physical barrier for them to stop doing that. And when they do that, it can be really dangerous because people coming the other direction are forced into oncoming traffic, which is not great. So I have to take a -2 for this. And so you can see the direction of the one-way traffic for cars changing a lot. So I'm going to give that another +1. I'm not going to do it each time it changes, but just for that method of changing it so that vehicles aren't using it as a thoroughfare, which makes a lot less vehicles, which makes it a lot more comfortable for those cycling. And here I kind of have one positive and one negative as I approach the intersection. The first is maybe you saw that bike logo with the 2 lines, which indicates that's where I should stop in order to be picked up by the signals. So that's a camera that's picking me up and will trigger the signals for me. So I'm going to give a +1 for that technology, because I think every cyclist has had the problem where they get to an intersection and the light won't trigger for them. So this is a really good solution that we've seen popping up around Toronto a lot. But I'm going to give a -2 because I've noticed along Shaw, sometimes you have very long wait times against other streets like this. And I think it's because the other streets are seen as the main street. Shaw is seen as like a lower tier of street, and so wait times are longer. But this is kind of backwards in my mind. Since Shaw is such a popular street, it should be seen as a pretty large street, even though it's maybe smaller in size. So the cycle timing on those lights could be a lot better, I think. So this is kind of an awkward situation where no one really knows what to do, but I'm going to give this a +1 because I think that these situations are much easier to deal with and much safer to deal with when you have a road like this where everybody's calm to a more reasonable level of traffic. So not +1 for the driver behavior, but +1 because that wasn't that bad to navigate, and it wasn't really unsafe either, even though it was awkward and uncomfortable. Here you have another long wait time. I'm not going to keep taking off points. I've made the point there already. But this one you can see the other streets closed for a street festival. So you can see another cyclist figures out that you could probably just go through here. I don't normally promote running red lights, but there's no traffic there. So probably the smarter thing to do in that situation, but I did wait. So you can see the number of cyclists on here and how it really feels like you're the dominant mode, and so you don't have any stress about cars backing up behind you, and you can see that people of different abilities can use the street, so I'm going to give a +1 for that. Again, a really awkward situation, but I never felt too unsafe because everyone's going a reasonable speed. And here I'm going to give +1 because it's so safe that kids can use it, and it's safe enough that parents feel that they can use it without it being a huge risk. So I'm going to give I wish I could give it a big +1, but I'll give it just a +1. All right, and now we have a little bit of a section that's a bit different. We have two-way. There's some positives and some negatives, so I think I'm going to not give it any pluses or minuses, but I mean, it still narrows vehicles. This median helps to narrow the road and slow down vehicles, but the negative is that this is continuous in both directions from here until the next main street. So you do get more vehicles on this section than you do in the earlier sections. And it creates a bit more pressure for you to ride a bit faster or to let vehicles pass. I will say one negative too about having parking on the side create calming is when there is no parking, it creates this really wide, more uncomfortable method. But luckily this area does have a lot of parking. Okay, we're getting into this section's probably the worst section here. This is something that you see in Toronto a lot, and I absolutely hate it. There's parking on the right and streetcar tracks on the left, and so I'm going to give this if I could, again, a big -2, but I'll just give it a regular -2. Being squeezed between parked cars and the streetcar tracks, luckily on this day there weren't as many cars parked, but sometimes there's a lot, means you have to choose by either risking falling into the streetcar tracks, which can be really dangerous, or getting doored. And it's a really uncomfortable situation that I really hate being put in. So this stretch that we're going to see until King Street, I absolutely hate it, and I wish we would avoid anything like this, putting cyclists in these kinds of situations. And here I'm going to give a +1 and a -2. For the leading pedestrian signals is a +1, but then the fact that there's no leading cyclist signal, so technically what I did there was illegal, I'm going to give a -2. Now here we turn left onto some protected cycle tracks, so I will give this a +2. It's facilitating a connection to another South Street, so usually you want to keep greenways as direct as possible, but it's not always possible, so sometimes you need stuff like this. And this intersection coming up, I'm going to have to give it another big -2. It's really dangerously designed. There are supposed to be no right turns on red, but obviously nothing to enforce that. So this driver tries to do it anyways, and I tried to tell them not to. But even if it was green, it's dangerous because there's no protection when you turn right, and you could easily get clipped by someone turning right around you. So that's not great. This section I'm probably just going to leave. No pluses or minuses. Because it could use some real protection, but at least you get a bike lane. And then this intersection again, I'm going to give another -2 because it's one of those bike lanes that puts you in between straight and turning traffic, which is really dangerous. And I have no idea what happened when I was along here. There was some backup that was happening, and eventually I just had to go into the active lane beside me. Really dangerous. So you can see what these conditions, what they can force cyclists into, which is, now we're very, very far away from that main Shaw Street experience as we get down here. And so this area I think could use quite a bit of work. And so I'll just pop in quickly. I already kind of addressed this, but it would be much better if all this area had physical protection. The fact that it doesn't makes it a lot more dangerous. The design of this is not great. And this light also takes a very long time, and I already addressed that, so I won't give it any points. Okay, and then at the end here, this road basically almost turns into like a strode, and you have to cross Lakeshore, and you're sandwiched in between vehicles. So I know I already gave points off for a similar situation, but I'm going to do it again because of just how bad this section is. Yeah, I mean, we went from kids riding on bikes and be feeling safe to having to be squished in between a van and a car and moving vehicles, and then having to cross a 6 or 7 lane road. So it's not great here. But one thing I will give a +1 for is the connection to the Martin Goodman Trail down here. We started along a bike route and we're ending along an even better one. So the fact that it has connections to other cycling infrastructure, I think, is worth another +1. So before I get into some final thoughts, just some things to keep in mind when trying to look at and compare this final score with those that you see on other channels. The first, while I consider the core part of Shaw to be one of the best cycling experiences in Toronto, we have to keep in mind that this video assesses the whole greenway, parts of which were designed quite a while ago. Secondly, is that I think I'm probably more harsh with my criticism than others, so keep that in mind if you're looking to compare scores. The point of this channel is to understand how we can implement some of the safest design elements in the world to our networks. And so my criticisms are compared against that, which is obviously a really high bar. Having said that, I think it gives us a good opportunity to compare the best sections of Shaw with the worst sections of the whole greenway, as well as with other greenways. So, I talked about different elements during the ride, but what I think is the biggest contributing factor, the best part of Shaw, is simply the lack of motor vehicles. This one thing is why so many people feel safe biking here, and how cyclists outnumber cars by a great deal, which is what makes you feel like you can be more comfortable and assertive as a cyclist. This is induced demand. It is, but in a positive way. It can't be overstated that this did not happen by accident. The reduced motor traffic in this area is created by the design of modal filters. Not just the big flashy one you saw, but each time the direction for one-way car traffic changed, that's a modal filter. Because of this, most drivers are local users and very few are just passing through, significantly reducing the number of vehicles. This is the power of proper greenways or bikeways. And I think this is the biggest difference between those that are designed well and those that are designed poorly. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on Shaw Street or your local greenways. How do they stack up? Also, click all those little YouTube buttons and tell me if you like the video and if you'd like to see more. Thanks. See you next time.